Hi everyone, this is Garrison for Iron Kingdoms at War and Just the Bases, and I am here to walk you through the most simple way to base wargaming, in this case War Machine miniatures. Now there are of course all sorts of complex methods you can use to create some very beautiful base effects, many of which you'll see around the internet and certainly on the custom bases site that I'm a blogger for, justthebases.blogspot.com. But today I'm going to go over basically basing 101, which is simple sand texture with a couple of wrinkles to take it to kind of the second and third level in terms of basing. But if you have, this is a great video for people who have never done anything to decorate the base of a miniature. But also I will show you a couple tricks, even for the veterans, that I think will make things a little faster or a little nicer for you too. So there should be something for you folks too. But this really is kind of a noob oriented how to texture a miniature base video walkthrough. So you'll first of all notice here I've got Cossite Woodsman from the Kador faction in War Machine, and you'll say, wait, there's supposed to be at least 6. Well, here's the 6. I'm holding them off because I'm doing a text and photo version of this walkthrough as well, so I'm going to save a miniature to do that way. In fact, actually what I'm probably going to do is maybe pull 1 or 2 of these off later, we'll see. So anyway, I'm going to show you basically how to base a miniature with sand texture, the simplest way you can do it, with a couple of other wrinkles to the process. So what I've got here for supplies is of course my miniatures, who are already painted and slotted into their bases. You'll notice these bases are gray because I primed my figures while they were already attached to their base. You know, obviously bases typically are, you know, black like this, no matter what kind of gaming miniature you're talking about. Usually that's the black plastic disc we're talking about. The only reason these are gray is because they have been primed. Also, they are affixed to these old paint jars with a little poster putty, because that's the way I like to paint them, and also when I go to do that texture on the base, it makes it that much handier too. So anyway, my materials are of course my miniatures. I need a couple of old paintbrushes of various sizes. I've also got my sand, which is my basic texture. Now this is a beach sand. Be careful if you pick up something like a play sand. You want something that's a fine grain sand, not something that's like a craft sand, which is like the very, very white stuff you'll find at Michael's. Or the very, very white stuff sometimes called a play sand that you'll find in a hardware store. You want to look like beach sand. It should have that beige color to it, then you know you got the right stuff. That's going to be the basics. I'm also going to take it to kind of the second level with a mixture of sand and kitty litter, which is another material I like to use that you can see here. You can see in here there's some chunks of kitty litter and some sand mixed together. Also, of course, you can use little stones from gravel or whatnot, whatever you come across. I've got a few of those in this bag, okay, and they can just add a little more detail to your base. And the other thing you're going to need is something an adhesive to get your sand and stuff to stick to the base. And of course, I'm going to use Mod Podge, which is a craft adhesive, and it's basically really watered down white glue, essentially is what it is. It's a craft sealer, and by the way, you don't need this. You can use watered down Elmer's glue or Weld Bond, or whatever your favorite white glue is. Just water down some glue and use that for your basing material. But I wouldn't suggest glue right out of a tube. That's going to be a little thick, and you'll want to at least water it down. That's why I like this Mod Podge basically sealer for crafts, because it's kind of like watered down glue out of the bottle. So what I do is I shake that up, I open it, and then because I shook it up, I've got some on the lid. I'm just going to work from the cap there. Alright, so really simply, the most simple texture you can do for a miniature, so this is basing 101, is to get some of your, I'm going to do this guy first, is to get your miniature, okay, get some glue, or in my case Mod Podge, on your, I like to apply with a paintbrush. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Get your glue on your base with your paintbrush. Make sure you don't leave anything uncovered. By the way, you'll notice this miniature is obviously painted already. You could apply this texture before you paint your miniature. You could even apply this texture before you put your miniature on the base. You could apply this texture even before you prime it. and that would be fine. So I've got my miniature with the glue in there. Now what I'm going to simply do, okay, is put them in my sand container, okay, and I'm just going to take a handful of sand, and hopefully, yeah, you're seeing that on the camera. I'm just going to let that fall in there, okay. Make sure I've covered it. You could certainly take the miniature, you know, I want to keep them on here just for now, but you could dip the miniature in that tray too, and just, that's another way to do it rather than drop the sand onto it. But there he is. There's your most basic basing, which I'll paint up for you later in another part of the video. But that base now has texture. I can go, if any's hanging over the edge that I don't want, I can just kind of rub it off with my finger. Okay, if it went over the edge of that lip and I don't want it there, you can rub that off. Sometimes I like the irregularity of a little sand over the edge. It just kind of breaks up that circle around the base, and I kind of like that. So he's done. All right, so that's pretty simple. All right, so just to show you, I just talked about dipping a miniature in. So let me take this guy off of his base. I'm going to get rid of this poster putty on the bottom. Okay, so I've got another miniature here. I'm going to do them the same way. So I'm going to get some of my adhesive, apply it to the base. Okay, make sure I'm covering it all up. Really good. Sometimes if there's a little depression where the slot is that the miniature fit into, put a little extra glue in there. That'll take care of the depression. And plus, once you get that sand on there, that's going to disappear. So that's a nice little shortcut for you. You don't have to worry about necessarily filling that in with green stuff unless it's really recessed. Alright, so this is the other way you can do it. You know, before I drop sand on the miniature, this time I'm just going to put the miniature in my sand tray and just, you know, sift them around in there, and then he's ready to go. Alright, so 2 miniatures down. It's pretty simple. That's basic sand texture. Doesn't get much easier than that. Alright, now let's say you want a little bit of a more uneven ground. Okay, so you want a more uneven ground. So what you do is, you take your miniature. Okay, I'm going to take her off her base too. Or off her base. That would be bad. I'm going to take her off her paint jar. Okay, you get your glue going again. I dropped a little sand in my cap. Oh well. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get in there, and I'm saying her, by the way, because it's a female figure. I'm going to get a little sand on there on the base. Okay, now when capes are close to the bottom like that, you want to be real careful. Alright, it's not the end of the world if you get a little on there. In fact, to get around her cape, I went onto the base just to play it safe. Just to kind of get in there. We'll fix that up in just a second because we don't want sand all over the side of the base, that's for sure. Alright, so I'm pretty confident I've got nice coverage. This time I'm going to go to my sand and kitty litter mixture. Now what's going to happen with this is we're going to get more of a rocky texture to this because it's, well, it's kitty litter is going to be like a kind of like your big rocks or small rocks, and the sand in there is to provide that grit. So I'm going to put her in. I'm going to sift her in around there. Okay, I'm going to blow some of this off because some of that kitty litter is going to be loose. Okay. Now remember I had some on the back where I tried to avoid her cape, so I'm going to rub some of that off right off with my finger. Easy as it gets. Okay. Now if you notice her base, okay, if you notice her base, it's got this nice kind of like a rougher texture to it. So that's good to go. Okay. So this is basing 101. I mean, basically we're just applying a single dip of texture, whether it's sand or a candy litter mix. Now we're going to do another miniature. We're going to do this guy here. Now the only difference with this one is I am going to put a small rock on his base. And again, this is really simple stuff. I mean, you can get so beautifully complicated with your miniature bases. You're going to see some other stuff on the blog, just the bases.blogspot.com, which is really cool. Some stuff done by some other privateer press hobbyists that will blow you away. This is the basics. This is for beginners. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my little bag of rocks. Okay, I'm going to hand pick a rock. I could do this with tweezers if I wanted to. I'm going to stick it on that base. Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm going to add a little extra Mod Podge kind of a glop there to hold it in place. Sometimes that happens. Alright, so now I've got a stone on there. I could add 2 or 3 around the other side if I wanted to. I'm going to use my original sand texture. Cover up this base. Okay, let it sift off. Okay. Voila. Okay, another miniature based and ready to go. That stone right there will be fun to paint up later. Alright, so that's basically we basically did 3 different types of basing. We started off with a figure that was just sand texture. Then we went to the figure that was the sand and kitty litter mixture. Right? And then we did this figure here, who is the sand texture but adding a rock. If you wanted rockier soil with the bigger rock like that, then you do the sand and kitty litter after you apply that stone. So that's basing 101. It doesn't get much simpler than that. The next video I'm going to do is just talk about some really simple painting techniques to get these table ready. It is really easy. And yeah, so we'll go on to that part of the video in just a second.